root of all evil. I learned that somewhere.
So especially at the very start, when your data sets of your customers could be, you might think they're big enough, but they're not. And so you could end up pretty much doing exactly the thing you're trying to avoid, which is going down precisely the wrong path.
Can I rephrase your question?
Sure.
Is this an accurate rephrase? That what about the fact that when you first begin, you have a very small number of customers, you don't have a statistically significant sample, and you could make wrong inferences?
And it might be very hard to know that it's statistically insignificant.
I see. I think what you mean is, so the question is, would it be hard to know that it's statistically insignificant?
Well, your rephrasing is correct, but the particular problem I've seen is, I've seen other people's startups, and it's happened to me as well, that we thought we had got a big enough pool of sample customers. And we turned out later, when we were trying to work out how it had gone horribly, horribly wrong, it was, we'd actually managed a self-selecting group or something like that where...
Classic, yeah.
Exactly.
I've done that many times. The fastest way to iterate is to go around in a circle. Right? Physics majors will understand that's actually maximum acceleration. Round and round in circles. You feel like you're pivoting and learning and everything's great. It's a real danger. The danger actually isn't the small sample size, it's what we do with the sample size. So let me answer in two ways. The first is, all of our intuitions about sample size, and anyone who's actually taken a statistics class will have this worse than the rest of us. Our intuitions about sample size are driven by things like presidential polling. I don't know what the equivalent polling here is, but whatever polls it is that you look at, they tend to be of large populations where the details matter, right? So we want to know if a politician has, 51.1% or 49.9% of the vote. It matters a great deal, right? Those last few decimal points matter a lot. What we forget is that sample size, the reason we have, and therefore you need to sample a large number of people. What we forget is that to determine the sample size, you need to know two things. You need to know how many people are in the sample, but also what's the underlying signal-to-noise ratio of the thing being measured. And in things like political polling, the thing being measured is quite noisy and quite difficult to ascertain. The good news about entrepreneurship is we shouldn't be wasting our time polling those kinds of questions. Yes, we have a small sample size, but when we're looking for the big questions, it's quite easy to see that that's okay. Like, for example, I used to have customers, I talked about this at India, we would have customers come in for in-person usability tests and then refuse to use the product. I skipped over what happened the first time that happened, because I was the head of engineering. I said, fire that customer, get me a new one, right? Throw it back. Where'd you find that bozo? Get me a new one. Second customer comes in, refuses to try the product. I'm like, come on. Whoever's doing the selection of these customers is an idiot, right? Third customer in a row refuses to use the product. It's like, that's odd. 5 customers in a row, okay? 10 customers in a row. The only question we don't need to ask at that point is, do we have a statistically significant sample? Okay, it's pretty obvious. What were the odds that 10 people in a row independently decided that this thing was so bad they wouldn't even try it? Right? When we're asking those kinds of questions, small samples can be quite accurate. But that leads us to issue number 2. There is a school of thought in traditional management that is really, likes this at first, and they're really into testing and iteration. It usually goes by the name stage gate. Some design thinking people believe in this. And the basic idea is that we call it stage gate because through each section of the waterfall, we have a gate where we ask, should we go forward or kill this project? It's like the apotheosis of general management product development, was been created in the 80s. I think this is the last major rev of this methodology. And in that model, what we need to do is a tremendous amount of market research, then market testing, then we build a prototype, then we do a test market, then we do all these things to try to figure out, hey, are we on the right track? And then we go through a gate that says launch, and we're off to the races. And I hope you can start to see where the problem's going to be, which is we do these small sample tests in a sample market, and then we say, we got the answer, and then we're like, now that we have the answer, we can go off and just waterfall our way to success. But of course, there is no the answer. Right? There is no sample that is large enough ever to be really quite confident that you've made it until you've actually launched and deployed and you have 500 million people using your product, or whatever your equivalent change the world scenario is. Up until that point, at any moment, you might discover, oops, this thing works but only for this tiny local population. We test marketed it in this city, but actually only people in that city want it. Or actually, they like being part of the test market. And so now that it's a mainstream product, people don't want to use it anymore. Any product that has early adopters, which is every product, has this problem. When you want to switch to the mainstream, sometimes the early adopters bail out because now you sold out. Right? I mean, bands have this problem all the time. So the issue is, instead of conceiving it as get the data and then launch, we really have to start to get into the mindset of that build, measure, learn feedback loop is a continuous process that we always do, all the time, always rechecking, are our assumptions correct? Are they actually leading to the kind of success that we want? And the last thing I'll say, if you go all the way back to that Web 2.0 slide where I talk about the land of the living dead, the true curse of startups is you usually don't fail spectacularly. Usually what happens is you try something and you have modest success, right? Some people use it. Some people use it a little. You get some revenue. It's even growing month after month, just 2 orders of magnitude too slow to achieve your vision. And most people at that point can't pivot. It's like, well, but we might turn the corner any moment. And it's just like, we keep doing the same thing we've done over and over again. Maybe we'll get a different result this time. But come on, what are the odds? So rather than get yourself in that situation and then get wedged, my suggestion is you start from the beginning to conceive everything as an experiment, everything is a test, everything is that build, measure, learn feedback loop. Then that would be less likely to happen. Cool. Is there time for one more?